Hi, I'm Piotrek from Triphobia Studio and welcome to our first devlog, where we will take you behind the scenes of how our debut game is being made, set in the iconic spaces of our hometown. Today we will talk about two core areas of our work, as well as mechanics we have developed over the past few months. We will discuss the camera system and dialogues, which I am currently working on in Unreal Engine 5, and also the modeling of the Falowiec and the environmental design in Blender. That part is led by Krzysiek. There is a lot to dive into, so let's get started. Our game is a side-scroller, but from the very beginning we knew we didn't want to lock the player into a single static perspective. We wanted the camera to be more dynamic, to shift depending on the scene, support the storytelling, and help build atmosphere. That's why we created a system that, while seemingly simple, allows us to tell the story in a more cinematic way. The cameras aren't automated. It's important. Each shot is placed manually, carefully tailored to the location, the layout of the room, what should be in frame, and also what should stay out of sight. It's not just about composition. It's about building tension, emphasizing details, and sometimes showing familiar places from a new point of view. The camera doesn't behave the same way in every situation. Sometimes it dynamically follows the character, giving a sense of rhythm and pacing, and other times it stays static to reveal more of the surrounding environment. This helps the player better understand where they are and get a fuller sense of the space the story unfolds in. In certain scenes, we deliberately frame specific locations or objects that are important from a narrative perspective, subtly guiding the player toward possible interactions. One example is when the camera lingers on the door to Józef's storage room, a subtle hint that something of interest might be hiding inside. This approach let us smoothly transition between intimate moments and wide shots without breaking narrative cohesion. It's also worth mentioning that when a player interacts with a particular object, for example during an inspection, the perspective shifts again. This mechanic adds an extra layer of immersion. But we will get into how inspection system works in more detail in a future episode. Another big area I have been working on is the dialogue system. After a lot of testing, we decided to use Not Yet Dialogue plugin system, a solution that fits the needs of our game, I would say, perfectly. On one hand, it offers intuitive setup for core features like branching dialogue, choices, and conditions. On the other hand, it can be expanded with more advanced functionality like camera animations during conversations, which significantly enhance the narrative and allow us to shape the tone of a scene. It's worth noting that the same plugin is used by the developers of the Ascent, which only proves its reliability in more complex productions. To us, dialogue is not just about the written content, it's also about the form. The interface needs to feel consistent with the game's mood. On a functional level, we are implementing it in a way that allows a player to not just read the text but really feel it. That's why we are experimenting with word-by-word animations, highlighting key lines, and subtle visual effects that make the dialogue feel like an organic part of the experience, not a break in immersion. And speaking of immersion, this is the perfect moment to hand things over to Krzysiek, because what he has done with the Falowiec, well, that is a whole story in itself.
Working on this building wasn't just a typical modeling session. It was an attempt to recreate a very specific place with as much attention to details as possible. The entrance plaque, hallway layout, flooring, wall texture with worn-on plaster, everything had to feel right. One key element was the series of long external galleries that bind the whole structure together. I work from both photographic reference and memory, from observations and a small detail that only someone who knows this place well would even notice. We've styled the setting around the early 2000s, a period that had a very specific atmosphere and a color palette. The shared spaces of the Falowiec are just a part of the story. Equally important are the more personal interiors, like protagonist's apartment or the cluttered janitor's storage room. We are aiming to evoke a sense of time and place through objects that are now increasingly rare, like wall unit, a CRT TV, or that characteristic wood paneling. Everything is modeled with as much care as possible for structure texture, wear, and lighting. Lighting, in fact, plays a key role in shaping the feel of the game world. It needs to emphasize detail, but not to overwhelm it with harsh shadows. Since a significant part of the game takes place in the evening, striking the balance between atmosphere and clarity was essential. When creating the environment, we don't just focus on building geometry or interior props. The exterior matters just as much. In the case of the Falowiec, we are also building the surrounding space: benches, scattered trees, sparse vegetation. Weather is also a crucial part of the scene's atmosphere. A rainy autumn evening helps set the tone. To achieve that, we use specific lighting setup and rain effect to support immersion and establish mood. So, that's all for this devlog. In the upcoming episode, we'll keep showcasing the mechanics and the world elements we are working on. If you want to stay up to date and get more behind-the-scene content, follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So, thank you for being here and see you in the Falowiec.